If you ever watch Mad Men, you will see that it's all run by bastards in suits, and women have a role which is they're candy. You do what I want, and if I fancy a kiss and a cuddle, it's going to happen. To be honest, it's exactly the same now as it's always been. It's traditionally a white middle-class Oxbridge business where, that's why all the agencies are named after the four blokes that set them up.
Hi, and welcome to A Class of Their Own podcast, revealing the human stories behind their name. We will hear honest and intimate reflections from our guests who, despite their circumstances, shape a world that reflects their unique visions of success. Join me, Mira Magecha, to learn from these inspirational people and take the first step to make your own change. On today's episode, we're joined by Dave Buonaguidi. Welcome onto the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm so excited for this conversation. You're also known as the Real Hackney Dave.
Real Hackney Dave. Yeah.
Where does that name come from?
Well, it's because nobody can remember or spell Buonaguidi. And it was when I first started using Instagram. On Twitter, I was Hackney Dave because it was during the 2012 riots in Hackney. And people were calling themselves their first, where they're from and their name. So you had Brentford Pete and everyone was sort of putting their message across. And so I got involved with Twitter and didn't really like Twitter. It got a bit narky. And then when I went onto Instagram, I went, I'm just Hackney Dave. But then somebody already had it. So I did that.
Now you're the real Hackney Dave.
Rather than fake. Not even from Hackney. I'm from Paddington. I'm like Paddington, West London, South London. But it's where I am now.
Where you are now. So we have a tradition on this podcast to ask, who is Dave? So we're going to stick to that and go, who is Dave?
Who is Dave? Dave is a 59-year-old, overweight, slightly cynical. I'm being honest, I'm straight. Artist, a printmaker based in Hackney Wick, obviously, because I have to call myself Hackney if I move.
You've lost all your credentials.
Green Dave, it all just falls apart. And I'm a professional artist, screen printer, and I've been doing that full time since 2020.
So only 4 years?
Yeah. I mean, I did it for about 5 years before that. I discovered it very late because most people you go to college or you study your art practice and then you do that for your life. I went into advertising for 35 years and was on the corporate side for a long time and had agencies that I'd set up and then just kind of fell out of love with it over a kind of 4 or 5 year period where I realized it was never going to be what I really wanted.
Yeah.
And I left an agency that I'd set up and went and did a workshop in Dalston. I had a year where they put me on gardening leave for a year. And I did this workshop and it was like a religious epiphany. I mean, I walked in there and I just went, fuck, this is what I'm studio. I'm not boardroom. I like being covered in shit. I like being surrounded by people who are like me. When I worked in advertising, nobody was like me. They were all very corporate. They liked that corporate scene. They were very 9:30 to 5:30. It was all very structured and I'm just loose. And when I found myself in that situation, I literally did life like handbrake turn, just went, wow. Fuck, now I know what I should be doing. Now I know what I want to be doing. And I've got to try and work out if I can do it in a year because I didn't really want to go back into advertising because I'd set up loads of businesses. And I think once you've worked for yourself, it's very difficult to go and work for somebody else. And I had a year to try and do that. So I sort of just applied myself in the same way that I would do when I worked on the corporate side, discipline, professionalism, get your shit together, build your portfolio, build your thing, your brand and whatever. Didn't manage it in the first year, so I had to go back but I just carried on doing it. I was also going through it was quite a big moment for me because I was 55 when I went full time. And when I realized that I wanted to do something else, I was 50. When you hit 50, it's a very weird thing that happens, which is you suddenly realize, wow, I'm dark side of the moon now. I've got fewer years left of me than I've got fewer years ahead of me than I got behind me. Your parents start getting really old. You start to notice they're really old. All your mates start dropping dead. And there's this sort of, it sounds morose, but there is a moment when you realize, hold on, this train ride doesn't last forever.
Yeah.
And And so I just thought, Christ, I live in London in the 21st century, which is probably about as good as it has ever been in the history of the world. I can choose where I live, what I do, what I eat. I'm very, very fortunate. I've got loads and loads of things that millions and billions of other people around the world don't have, and I was still miserable. And I just suddenly thought, Christ, I'm working in a business, my business, with a whole bunch of people that I don't like very much, doing things I don't really like to do for people who don't really care. And
and that's a moment.
Which is pretty catastrophic.
Yep.
And then on top of that, I was married, and it was a disaster. It was not a very good marriage. It was effectively over. And so every aspect of my life was just packing in. And I thought, Christ, I'm working so hard for all these other people to try and provide and be the Italian dad. And I was just miserable. So I just said, right, now I'm just going to do things I want to do. And it's the first, I don't know what your background is, but it's probably the same as mine. Like, your parents came over and you become, what do your parents do?
Unfortunately, my dad passed away.
Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. What did he do when he came over?
When he came over, I think he had a paper factory in the UK worked in a
trying to be useful, right?
Trying to be useful.
It's an immigrant thing. Try and be useful. My dad used to say, try and be useful, because at some stage somebody might ask you to leave. Yeah. But if you're useful, they won't.
Yeah.
And he had a restaurant. And so I've got this pleaser thing of like trying to look after and nurture and, build and I just thought, you know what, fuck that. I want to do this for me now. I want to do what I want to do.
How did your journey start? So what did childhood look like, and where were you, and where did you grow up?
Pretty good. Grew up in London, born in in Paddington. Grew up. My dad was a restaurateur. My mum is an artist, but she was obviously a housewife. We had two little kids, me and my sister. We grew up in Paddington, Clapham. Then we moved out to Kingston, and then my parents divorced, and I lived with my mum for a bit. Had an incident when I lived with my mum where I was found hanging on the stairs by my sister, and she came out and went, "Oh, David's dead," to my mum, and my mum went, "What are you talking about?" And they went out there, and I was kind of had a school tie tied around my neck. I had no idea what happened. 14, and I was in a coma for about a week. Told I was dead. Well, they were told I was dead. They got me going again. I was in a coma for a bit, last rites and all that kind of jazz. And then managed to come out of it.
And when you say, because this is new information.
Yeah, I try not to give you all the information beforehand. I like to try and keep a little bit of something back.
Great. When you say you don't know what happened, do you remember what led you to that moment?
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. I don't remember anything for about... I remember a couple of things when I came out of hospital. I came back home. There were a couple of things that I remember doing or starting to do, and then they were finished. A couple of art pieces or a model I was making, right, and they were done. So it's obviously I'd done that, and then, but apparently I spoke to my mum about it this summer actually, because I was always intrigued. It never really bothered me, never ever thought about it. But now as I'm getting older, and especially now that I've found this thing which I really enjoy, which is trying to dig out from people what it is they really want to be doing. Yeah. Because I've gone through quite an interesting journey to get to where I am, and I'm loving every moment of it. But I sort of think I know how easy it is to sort of be 22, 23, 30, 40, and just carry on drifting through the corporate world or whatever it is you do, and sort of start to forget. And I know living in London's fucking difficult, and you've got to get money and all of that kind of stuff. But there is something that lives at the heart of everybody, which is this is what I really wish I was doing. Yeah. And so I get a huge amount of joy in talking to people like this guy about his business and how it's going. I love that. Because it's like if you can find something in people that they love doing, encouraging them to do it is the best feeling ever. And so, like I said, I never really thought about it, the accident, and I called it an accident. I don't know if I tried to kill myself. I don't know what happened. I think I was fucking about basically, and it was a prank on my sister that went wrong.
Do you remember what you were doing before?
No, nothing. I don't remember anything.
So what's the time period that you just don't remember anything?
From about probably, well, I mean, I was at school at the time. It was a school day. There was nothing kind of miraculous that happened during the day. And then it was like a sort of, I was in a coma for about 4 or 5 days, and then I was in hospital for about 10 days, and that was it. And then I returned home. But they pump you full of morphine so that when you're in, or when you're out, when you come back,
Yeah.
you don't get a huge shock to the system. You just drift back, and they reduce the amount of morphine in you. So I have no idea, and I've never had any kind of desire to do
A
a
regression.
regression or anything like that. I mean, imagine if you sort of did it and you found it was your sister doing it, you'd be horrified. But as I got older, I think it became something that I suddenly thought, shit, man, I could have been. I mean, I managed to respawn at 14.
Yeah.
I've experienced an incredible amount of things, good and bad.
Yeah.
And I would have missed out on all of those things.
Yeah.
And I certainly would have missed out on the era that I'm in now, where I'm just loving every minute of what I do. You know, I don't feel stress. I don't feel anxiety like everybody does in any job that they're doing. I'm lucky that I can come in and go to my studio and do what I want and then go home and I go to bed and I repeat. It's very simple, but it's sort of sometimes I think as you get older, you become more aware of what it is you want to do, and
Yep.
you become more aware of what's bad for you and what's good for you. But you know, in your 20s, your focuses are different in your 20s, 30s, and 40s. And then when you hit your 50s, you know, your kids leave home. You know, mine are 18, 19. And so that era of my life has kind of changed quite a lot. So now it's kind of like I feel like I've done my duty as a dad, part of it. You know, I'm still going to be a dad, but it's now I just want to squeeze every bit of juice out of whatever's left in the orange because I'm loving it.
Do you think as you've got closer to 50, or as you were getting closer to 50, you could be more selfish in what you wanted to do? Was that one of those things?
Yeah, well, it was more of a kind of moment that it was like being hit by a van. I think when you're running a business, you know, and I was running this agency, I was the founder of this agency. I wasn't running it. There were like 6 or 7 other people running it. But it had 350 people, and the level of stress is just extraordinary.
Yeah.
And as you get more experienced and as you get older and you get more professional, whatever, you learn to deal with it in a different way. You know, living in London, like I said, is fucking hard enough. Living anywhere is hard enough, but London is particularly difficult. It's expensive. When you work in advertising or any corporate job, especially advertising, it's just the amount of bullshit that you have to deal with from everybody, whether it's employees, clients, customer, you know, like viewer. I mean, it's just relentless. And when you're senior, you fucking have to sit in through all of it. And when you're the founder, you take it really personally because it was my business, it was my agency, you know, and it's like watching other people come in and start fucking around or whatever. You know, you take everything much more personally. And I think it just compacted. I suddenly realized, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I go in, I look at these people, they look at me. I think that they're all thinking about trying to get rid of me, you know, even though it was my agency, even though I'd hired them and I was paying them quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
Just the daily relentless pressure of winning new business in order to give that whining fuck over there in the corner a pay rise because they want a good LinkedIn profile. I mean, it's all the wrong, the agendas were all fucked. And, you know, my agenda was just to make work. I love solving problems with cute gangs of people who are really smart, often smarter than me. I love that.
When you think about your journey and how you got into advertising, what was the journey like?
Well, I went to useless at school.
Yeah.
You know, I had my accident at 14. 2 years later, it was probably a blessing in disguise, actually, because it gave me a great excuse for failing all my exams. I basically got art and woodwork, O-levels. I got into an art school because that was the only thing I could do, or the only thing I was interested in. Managed to fluke my way into art school. Did that for 2 years, did a 2-year foundation and then a 2-year graphics course. My dad had this very good Italian restaurant in Fulham called San Frediano. That also happened to all the top ad agencies were in Knightsbridge at the time. So they used to go to his place, to, like their canteen. So I used to work there in the summer holidays and think, what are all these people? They just seem to be eating lunch all day long, having fun. They all look gorgeous. And he said, oh, yeah, they all work in advertising. And he knew everybody.
Okay.
And so I just used to write old school letters to these people saying, hi, you know my dad. Could I come and work at your place for a couple of weeks? And they were all amazingly generous to me, gave me the time and space and become to talk to me and advise me. But I was doing graphics at art school, didn't know anything about advertising. And I just started hanging around with people who did, and I talked to them and watched and learned and sort of fumbled my way through it. And so I oddly enough, I was talking to somebody about it the other day. I did a piece for my end of year show where there's a famous photographer called Edward Muybridge who had a bet with a pal of his that when a horse runs, all 4 of its feet are off the ground. So he set up this thing where he got 25 cameras or whatever with wires, and then got a horse to run through just so he could win the bet. And he did prove that on shot 7, the horse's feet are off the ground. He then went mental, or went completely into it, into a wormhole with it, where he started taking pictures of men walking up and down the stairs and skinny men doing it, and then fat men falling down the stairs. And he basically recorded every single kind of type of thing. And one of them was a gymnast and stretched. This is in the 80s, so forgive me, but stretched jeans were really cool then on blokes. And I did a project for Wrangler jeans and just basically got all these photographs and just coloured in his legs blue, and then just cut it all together. And I went in to see an ad agency to get a book crip. We used to take your work in, and you'd show it to somebody, and they would sort of go, "Yeah, this is quite good," or "This is very good. Do this and do that." And they looked at it and went, "Oh, can we present that to the client?" And I'm like, "Yeah, what does that mean?" And they were like, "Well, we think it's good enough to present to the client." So I said, "Yeah, of course you can." And I was overwhelmed, But then word got around that there's this fucking student and he's got a piece of work that's being presented to the It never happened, but it just bumped me
further up.
And suddenly people take an interest, and you got a bit of a story, there's a bit of content to spread. And I've just found that in my life there are lots and lots of those moments that you just put yourself in that position, and just by chance or by push, a little lamp comes on.
What's the advice that you would give your younger self?
Wow. There's a few people I would avoid, and a few people I would punch really hard in the face. But to be honest, somebody asked me the other. Well, I do. I'm Italian. I don't think there's a place for it, but I do believe in it. But I just sometimes it's like actually doing it is the hard bit, because I don't want to go in nick. But I think a lot of it is. Somebody asked me this the other day, do you wish you'd started being an artist earlier? And I sort of think, no, I had an amazing life. The shit I did, I set up 4 ad agencies. I worked with some incredible people. I worked with the biggest bunch of arseholes you're ever likely to meet as well. I saw some incredible stuff, saw some awful stuff. And I wouldn't change any of it, to be honest. I think all of the things that I'm doing now, it tastes so much better because of all of the shit that I did. And, I was married for a long time in a marriage that really wasn't very good. And I stayed in it for too long because of my children. But I wouldn't have that any other way. I would still have married that person because I've got 2 amazing kids. So I don't regret anything. I think there are loads. I don't know. I think you go through life and there's lots of things that you sort of think, I wish I hadn't stolen that Mars bar. I wish I hadn't done that. It is what it is. It's happened. There's nothing. And I've always had a very philosophical way about it. It's happened. There's nothing you can do about it. If you gripe about what's happened in the past, you just get hamstrung. So it's just learn from it. Keep looking forward.
What's your biggest lessons then?
Just my biggest lesson would be the main thing would be find out what you really, really love doing and try and work out a way of doing it quicker. Even though, my life has happened, the things I've done have happened. But, in my teens, I was at college learning graphics. I fell into advertising. In my 20s, it's all about socializing in workplaces and learning and building. And then in your 30s, you start to get into relationships, and I might have rent or mortgage. And so that shifts a few things, and you think I better get professional and be a bit more focused. And in your 40s, you're like, maybe I should start building something a bit more substantial. And I think that there were things that I probably could have started a process a little bit earlier about being, trying to find my own happiness. I think, I was running an American the London office of an American ad agency with my partner, Naresh, at the time. We were 28, and it was very young to do that. And so I think we got that responsibility really early. And then suddenly when you've got a responsibility in business, you feel that you, like a dad, you have a responsibility to the people that you work with or that work with you.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to look after them, and you're trying to, and that I think, fed into one of my weaknesses, which is I'm a pleaser. I don't want to be disliked by anybody. I want everybody to love me. And you want to care for people and you want to try and understand them. And also my job as a dad and as a dad in the office is you want to mentor people, and you want to, if they're not performing, if they're unhappy or they're in a fucking shit relationship or whatever it might be, part of your job is to recognize that and understand, take a few days off or come and talk to me. And you want to be that person that will inspire them, because ultimately I'm employing them to do a job for me.
And therefore they need to be inspired.
If they're fucked up or if they're on drugs or whatever, and I've had plenty of conversations with people who are doing coke and, aren't good for 3 or 4 days of the week, and you have to help them. And it's like, when you're older and you can advise them, but when you're 28,
you don't have those life experiences.
You don't have those life experiences, and you've got a lot of pressure because you've got some people who are older than you and suddenly you're their boss. And I just think we got that responsibility very, very young and probably too early. But we had a riot because it was like an opportunity we would never have given up, because they'd had 6 people before us doing it, all of whom had done nothing with it. And we just thought, we actually looked at each other, me and Narish, and we just said, look, fuck, if it works, we get all the credit. If it fails, we're just another 2 bodies on a pile of bodies. No one will notice. And so we just let go. We had this rule where we would only hire people who weren't English. Narish is like me, he's Indian, born over here. And so we didn't have that British DNA in us. It was just like, well, let's just hire non-English people. So we had groups of people flying around. It was just brilliant fun.
When you think about the ad world and the ad agency world and what you were creating, is it as you see on the TV?
No. I think the ad business, it's changed a lot. In the 80s, in the 60s, 70s and 80s, if you ever watch Mad Men, you will see that it's all run by bastards in suits, and women have a role, which is they're candy. Candy floss. You work for me, you do what I want, and if I fancy a kiss and a cuddle, it's going to happen. To be honest, it's exactly the same now as it's always been. It's traditionally a white middle-class Oxbridge business where, that's why all the agencies are named after the 4 blokes that set them up. BBH, CDP, they're all it's all the same thing. The agencies I worked in, and I worked in some small ones and some big ones before I set up my own place, they were all very similar. But when you're young and you're stupid and you're a tiny little tooth on a massive cog in a big engine, and you've got no role to play at all apart from just keep turning up and doing what you're told to do. If you don't do it, you get fired. And so you get really good at, well, I really want this job, so I'm going to fucking make sure I turn up on time and I do what I'm supposed to do. When we had the opportunity to run our own place, when you're called Ramchandani and Buonaguidi, you're not going to name it after yourselves. It's impossible. And so we had an opportunity to set up an agency, and we named it St. Luke's, which was he was the patron saint of doctors and artists. So he fixed things with creativity. That's the way we looked at it.
Okay.
And we did it as a co-op. We just thought, well, why don't we, if we're going to set up a new type of business, why would you do it on a model that has been going since the 50s? And also there's an immigrant thing, which is like, why the fuck are you doing it like that? Why don't you do it better or quicker or cheaper?
Yeah.
And that era in the 90s was really interesting because technology was coming in, the internet was coming in, mobile phones were coming in, laptops were coming in. So suddenly it's like, well, you don't need that big corner office. Like that used to be the status symbol. I want this much money,
Absolutely.
A company car and a corner office. It was just like, mate, no, hot desk. And everyone was like, what's that? Hot desking. And we worked for before that, we worked for this American company when we were 28. And in LA, it was all hot desking, it was all skateboarding around and very cool and modern. And so that era hit, and I think it just meant that if you're going to set up a business, why would you do it on an old-fashioned model? And so we didn't name it after the partners. It was a cooperative, so we had 30 founders originally who were all equal shareholders. So we had a cleaner called Rose who had the same shares as the MD, who was Andy. He got paid a fuck of a lot of money to do his job, and she didn't get paid very much money to do her job. She was a cleaner, but they had equal shares. And so my thing is, if you don't come in that day, you're missed. So if Andy Law, the MD at the time, is sick, we'll miss him. If Rose is sick, we'll miss her probably more. And so it was like, there's a value. So I wanted to be part of something. I think it was maybe a desire to be a Hell's Angel when I was a kid. I love that thing of being in a gang, but I like a gang that backs you up. So everybody feels equal. So we're all equal shareholders. And it was a great experiment.
Did
it was
work?
a disaster. No, it didn't, because what happened suddenly, there were lots of scandals going on where people said, well, I don't really want to be an equal shareholder like that person. I think I should have more shares, because you were trying to dismantle 60 years, 100 years of this is how business works.
Yeah.
Why would you set up? And so our thing was like, if you don't like it, don't come here. If you like it, we didn't enter awards, we didn't do any of that stuff. And the ad industry is 99% is built on awards and all of that kind of industry bullshit.
Yeah.
I never wanted anything. I never did any of that. And that was our thing. So it's like,
you're coming here to actually do your work.
and it was, what was really interesting about the agencies I've set up, they were always the last place that you worked in the ad business before you decided to go off and do something else or do what you really wanted to do. And so you attracted, I wouldn't say desperate, but you attracted people who were like, thank fuck for doing this. And that helped them flourish, because it was also a place for me and Narish at the time to feel safe as creatives and to feel secure in what we did and to feel confident about what we did. And then when the internet came along, I think technology just took over. And it's like the conversation that's happening now with AI, where AI is replacing everything, which I think is a real shame, because I'm very tactile is the wrong word. I'm very hands-on, and I like that, making stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's a terrible shame that everything's being replaced by AI. In 20 years' time, we're just going to be fat pigs sitting in our houses waiting for the Deliveroo or Amazon to deliver what we've ordered online, and everything will be done. It's just Chat GPT. It's all too easy.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we just boiled all the soul out of everything. And this is the issue that I had with advertising. Clients used to come to ad agencies and go, God, you're the experts, and we really need you to help us make something magical that's going to help sell our product. And then what happened when the internet came along, they would go, well, basically, we've given you a whole checklist of all the things that we want. And if you do all of those things, then we'll have something that will work, because we did that last year and we've added in a few other tick boxes and it worked last year. And so we'd like to do that again, but cheaper and quicker. And it just got more and more pinched and condensed. And I just found that I was just coming up with hundreds of ideas. And my natural thing as any creative is to sort of challenge and to sort of go, I know you've got 10 tick boxes that you want. If you do 3 of them and ignore the other 7, treat your customers with a little bit of gumption, with a little bit of respect, that they can work things out. And I think we're also in an era where people don't want to work things out anymore. They just want it. It's like McDonald's, you just want it. I want a burger. Give me a burger now.
Yeah.
And they just want it quick. And everything is got very shallow and very superficial. And because of social media, suddenly everybody's an expert at everything. Whether it's reviewing. I'm not a restaurant critic, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you 1 star out of 5 because
I can.
Who the fuck are you? I used to like reading reviews by experts, film experts. Now everybody does it.
Yeah.
Because they've all got a voice. And I think it's just this sort of soupy blend of everything is just kind of packed in. And I just felt that advertising started to get that way. And it was starting to go that way. And I kind of like that thing of, maybe it's not about the work, maybe it's about the place. And so St. Luke's, we were still doing very good work. When I did Karmarama like 4 years later, I did it with Narish again. And it was a place based on the concept of karma. I mean, it's ridiculously naive. But we just sort of thought, if we can create a good place that is a nice place to work and is fair to the clients, and if we underspend that money, we don't keep it, we give it back to the client, and we do the fucking right thing. It's again, immigrant karma. If I break the law, I'm fucked. But if I do the good thing and I be useful, then it'll come back and help me. And it was an incredible agency, but it was one of those agencies that when you walked in, there was a tangible thing. It's a bit like when you walked into Wagamama for the first time, where you go, hold on a second. The staff here are a bit different, different vibe. It's all sitting next to strangers. I can see the people cooking my food. Whereas most restaurants, it was like very formal. Closed. And the kitchen was behind a door. And so we just wanted to create something very different, and I loved it. And in a way, I think the building and the thing was way more interesting than the product, because the product ultimately, whether you're selling, we were doing ads for IKEA and Costa Coffee, and we had a multitude of different brands across a massive spectrum, and you can't really put in your own personality, because most of the time I'm working on they've got a brand value, and I'm a bloke, and when I'm selling to women, I have to think like a woman, and I have to think like a younger person or an older man, and so you have to become a bit of a chameleon. And as a result, I think you don't there's no place for an ad agency's personality. Whereas that's one thing I love doing now, is it's all about my personality is what I put into my work, which is very liberating.
This episode is brought to you by Play for Change. Play for Change brings together leadership coaching, expert facilitation, and builds communities. They help craft real connections, spark learning, and turn play into powerful experiments to enable better relationships with yourself and others around you. To find out more, go to playforchange.co.uk. Links are in the show notes below. Let's fast forward to the next season of life. What is next? What are you looking forward to or not looking forward to?
Next for me, I mean, if I get to the end of the week and I'm still breathing, I kind of go, yeah, that'll do. I don't know, really. I mean, it's very different. It's very weird. In 2019, in 2017, I'd set up another agency with another Indian Trinidad guy called Arjun, and it was working with startups, and we were both working in. And when I finished my gardening leave, I had to go and get a job because I wasn't making enough money as an artist. And he was somebody that I worked with at Karmarama. I really like. He's the only employee that I've ever had that when I asked him, I was offering him the job, I said, what do you want? And he told me, he said, I want 70 grand a year, but I want 10% of anything I bring in. And I was like, thank fuck for that. Here's a bloke who, if he brings money in, I'll happily give him a slice. I'll give him commission. Of course I will. And I thought, it's a great incentive. And we did. And he made a lot of fucking money for us. He pulled in a lot of money, and I had to write him a very big check, but it was the best check I've ever written.
Because it meant you were making the other 90%.
Yeah. All my other partners collapsed in. They were like, what the hell? We've got to write him a check for this much money. I said, yeah, but don't forget he brought in that much money. And so I set up a business with him, and we really enjoyed it. We had a really good laugh, and I love working with him. And we were only working with startups. So we went salary free for 6 months to try and build a business. We got lots of equity in these businesses, but I love working with founders who, they all want to change the world now. And it's an amazing feeling to be part of that energy. I did that for a couple of years and realized that it was just not going to pick up. And also I just got to the stage where I was like 50 and I was just thinking, I don't know what the fuck I want to do. And I'd been doing the printing for about 4 years, in the morning, in the evening, on weekends. I was just printing like mad because I was so late to the game. I thought, I have to get technically good. I have to build whatever my thing is, and I have to try and create bodies of work and then connect the galleries. And it's just like starting again at 50 is difficult. But I started to feel some traction and it started to work. And I just thought, you know what? I think I went in and I was just feeling so disillusioned by everything. I think it was a meeting that we had for this client that we were working on. And the marketing director came in and said, we said, do you want us to present you the work? And he said, no, just stick it on Slack. I went, really? You can do it on Slack? So you ever worked with Slack?
Wow.
And his thing was like, normally you would present the work to the client and there'd be 5 people in a room and the client would say, this is what I think about the work. When you do it on Slack, it's basically a sandpit with every fox in the borough comes in and has a shit and then walks away. And we put the work on Slack and then 65 people all have a comment on it. I don't like that font. I don't like the colour. And I was just like, you know what, fuck off, do it yourself. And so I just thought, right, that's it, I've got to go. And I'd also written a book called Blah, 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 which was all about my experiences in advertising. And there's a bit in it where I transitioned from when I discovered the art world. And it was the most expensive resignation letter I've ever written. It cost me $6,000 to make this book, 3,000 copies of it. And then when I read it, I thought, what am I doing? Why am I still working in advertising? This book is the full stop on that career. And it happened to be 2019. And I thought, great, I'm going to hit 2020, matching numbers, 2020 vision. It's like it's written in the stars. And And then, of course, 2020 happened.
Yep.
So I remember doing a show when I was, I was working in the studio and I was just making stuff, and I had, I'd got my brand, all my thing, all my, my ideas were being made. I was making them all. And I did a show at the Affordable Art Fair with a gallery, and he thought he'd heard something about this virus.
Oh,
and
no,
he's like me, he's Italian immigrant, nutter. And he went, I've just bought 6,000 face masks. This will be fun. And I said, oh, well, I'll do. So I printed no snogging. And we did it as a laugh. We were giving them away. And people were coming up to us going, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you giving those away? Why are you shouldn't be propagating this myth. It's not going to happen. And I was like, yeah, of course, it's just a bit of fun. And then I caught it that night. And I remember going home and feeling really rotten. And so that March, for 7 weeks, I was fucked.
Ow.
And I actually thought, there were a couple of days when I thought, wow, I think this is the way I'm going to go. This is the way I'm going to go. I mean, my kids are going to come around and go, where's the money?
Were you still married at this point?
No. So I'd separate. So I'd basically pulled the plug on every aspect of my life. I'd left the marriage in 2018.
18.
Left the job in 19. And got to say, it was the most catastrophic 3-year period of my life where I was, lived in a hotel for a bit, which was pretty horrific when I missed out on a flat I was trying to get. Didn't see my kid. It was just a mess. But it was the best thing that ever happened because now I'm through it and I'm clear. But I remember when I got the virus, I thought, fuck me. I've just burnt all. I can't go back to advertising because they won't have me, and I don't want to go back there. And I've just suddenly, people are hoarding bog paper and fighting over food in supermarkets. And I'm an artist, making prints. And it's just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I just thought, what the worst bit of timing. But oddly enough, it was the best thing that ever happened because I remember saying to clients when I worked on the ad game, and we'd hit plenty of recessions, and I'd, 9/11, when 9/11 happened, all the clients stopped spending money because they just went, shit, we can't be out there saying stuff. And I said, no, you should be out there saying stuff. This is where you've got to look at all the brands you interact with like a dashboard of lights. And so what kind of phone have you got?
Google.
Have you?
Yeah.
Okay.
You weren't expecting that,
No,
were you?
I wasn't. I thought you were going to turn around and say Apple.
Yeah.
But it's like, whenever you see the Apple logo, whenever you see an Apple ad, whenever you see a poster, whenever you see a news flash with Steve Jobs has done something, or they've launched a new whatever, or there's a film about, that little bulb burns bright.
Yeah.
And when you stop spending money as a big brand, that bulb goes dark. And I think in times of need, you need to stand for something. And so many brands now, it's just about a product and nothing else. And what I love about those super brands like Apple, it's a phone. It's no different from a Google phone, maybe a little bit different. It's no different from a Samsung, but there's a different vibe about it.
Yep.
So you feel something when you've got a Samsung to an Apple to a Google. And it means something to you because you feel it reflects you, or, it's like the music you listen to, or the directors that you like, or the fashion labels that you like. You connect with them in an emotional way. And I just thought, shit, I've been saying that to clients for years, and they've always ignored me. They always want your advice, but they always choose to do what they want to do. And I was always like, don't turn off the taps. Just keep spending because everybody else is going to turn the taps off. And you've got to make sure that you stab something. You communicate and you connect. So when it happened to me, I just thought, this is like you've been framed. This is my moment where it's like,
you being tested.
Right, fuck, I'm sick, thinking I'm going to die at some stage. But also, it's like the entire world has been tipped on its head. There are very, very few events. My parents lived through the Second World War, but that was kind of Europe. But, to be part of something that's completely global, I mean, I don't think there are any parts of the world that weren't affected by it. And the stupidity and all the stupid shit that happened afterwards, where it was like, you're locked in, no, you're not, you're out, no, you're back in again. People ignoring it. I mean, it was a shit show. But it was a really interesting time because I think it challenged everything that everybody thought, where I don't have to live here anymore. I can live at home. I can live where I come from, and I can live in a nice place, and I can work at home, and I can split my time up. And I think it freed up a lot of stuff. And I found that was a really interesting moment for people to reevaluate who they were and what they wanted to be. And it had a massive effect on me.
What did you do during that time?
well, I was terrified. But because I got it early, when I came out, I was really nervous about, shit, all the galleries I work with are closed. I've got no website. I didn't have a presence online. Well, I did, but I wasn't, I only had Instagram. And I couldn't get supplies, couldn't get ink. And the people that I use fluoro ink, and there's only one place I get it from, and they'd all closed down for like 10 weeks. And I was really like, what the fuck am I going to do? Couldn't get paper. And so I just got newsprint. It was this thing that happened to me when I broke my leg playing cricket once. I fell over, skidded on the grass and had a massive snap. And my foot was flopping around all over the place. And I was lying on the floor. And this old bloke came walking past with his dog, and he said, "Mate, hey, what's happening now?" And I said, "Well, I think I've broken my leg." And I held my leg up, and my foot flopped down. And he went, "Yeah, that's broken." I went, "Yeah, thanks." He just went, "Keep your chin up," and just walked off. And I remember thinking, it's so fucking London. So fucking London. Keep your chin up. It's
not,
like that.
I'm going to call the ambulance or anything.
That was already on the way. But it was that sort of really London response. Have a cup of tea. Have a cup of tea and a biscuit. It'll be all right. And we had that really weird response in this country. And I just thought, keep your chin up was just such a stupid thing to say. And so I did a print. I thought, I have to do something that's going to keep me busy. I came out when everybody was going in full lockdown. So the whole of London fucked off. Where I was in Hackney, completely empty.
Because it emptied out, didn't it?
Yeah, just completely emptied. So I live in this kind of little sort of bunch of little warehousey thing. Everybody went. So I came out like really skinny as well. It was good. Lost a lot of weight. But the studio I was printing at was like 150 meters away. So I'd just walk up there. It was open access. So I just had the code and I'd go in there. There'd be nobody. And it was like 28 days later, for about 6-7 weeks, I would just go into this place. I didn't really know what to do. I'd clean all my screens and I'd sort of didn't really know what to print because where am I going to sell it? Nobody's open. And everybody, amazingly, a lot of artists that I knew just sort of went, I've just been given like $6,000 by the government. I'm just going to fucking stay at home for a year. I'm like, no, you should be doing something. Please do something. They're like, no, it's all right. So it's like they're just paying me to stay at home. I thought, great, you're just going to sit on the sofa eating Jaffa cakes, watching Netflix, and you lose all that momentum that you've built up from 17, 18, 19 to 20, and now you're going to have to go back through it again. And I just thought the first thing I have to do is stay busy. And I did a keep your chin up poster, window poster. The only paper I could buy was A2 newsprint from Amazon. I had some shonky inks left over, and I bought some dodgy fluoros, and I just had to mix and match, and I was mixing up inks. And I just said on Instagram, if you send me a stamped addressed envelope to my house, I'll send you one of these for free. And so every day I'd just go in there and I'd have a big stack of paper and I'd just print them and I'd cut them in half. I think I did about 4,000. And then every night I'd come back and there'd be 300 envelopes through my door. The postman, he said, "You're the only bloke I'm delivering post to in Hackney. Everybody else has fucked off." And then I'd have to go through them and put these things in, and then I'd post them because the post offices were all closed. Everything was closed.
Yeah.
So I'd just post them. And then the idea was that you just put one in your window, and it was just like, so if somebody was outside and they saw it, that they would just feel that connection to, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be all right. And I just did loads of that.
So you carried on using his keep your chin up.
Yeah. I'd like to meet that bloke again. I'd kick him up the arse with my broken leg. But it was just a really nice moment where he felt like you could sort of do something. And I don't know whether that's the dad or the thing I like doing now, which is trying to find people. It is people pleasing, but it's also trying to unpack a little bit and connect. And I spent my whole life in the ad game. How do I make my ad stand out next door to somebody else's ad where they've got double the budget, or they've got a film star in it, or they've got great music, or whatever, So you have to do something that's like, hold on, you've got to think different. You've got to think a little bit more guerrilla army, where you go, maybe if I do something that means something to somebody, or that makes them laugh, or that makes them feel something, or connects in a more emotional way. Like the best music that you've ever heard will connect to you, the lyrics or the beat or something, the best film, they all connect in a certain way. And I always found art was, why does it always have to be so passive? Why does it just have to be a nice landscape and you rub your chin and go, lovely landscape, great technique? It's never about the idea. And for me, I came from a world where it's all about ideas. It's like you start with an idea, you start with an audience. Who am I fucking talking to? You're talking to women in their 30s in Surrey. You know, it's that specific. So you say this is the shit they like. So you get into that world. But art, it's just technically this is what I do, and if nobody likes it, well, that's what I do. Whereas I was always like, this is what I want people to feel. I want people to look at my art. There's plenty of people who do what I do, words on things. That's, you know, I'm not original. But it's more about I'll try and connect with people in a way, whether it's using language, so north south, and it's like doing it in all of that language and stuff that we speak and the slang that I used to use as a kid, that you used to use as a kid, that my kids use. They're all changing all the time, and I just think that when you have words that you hear that bring you back, it connects, and so I just wanted to try and do something that meant something to people. And then keep your chin up. And I did keep your chin up again when we went into the second lockdown. And there was also something really interesting about being generous is a really nice thing. You know, I'm a feeder. You come from a
Indian family. Yes, I definitely am a feeder.
Food is the glue that sticks everything together. So it's those big moments when you're sitting around a table with 50 people, all of whom sound like they're fighting, but they're not. They're just talking.
We're just talking to each other.
And it's like, that's the world I'm from. Yeah. And so generosity and thought about other people is vital, and it helps you connect. And it's just helped me massively, because it just means I can be who I want to be. Because when I worked in the ad game, I'd have to act. I had to act not only in the world I was in, because I'm not cut out to be that. I can't do hidden agendas. I can't do politics. I'm too dumb for that, or I'm just not wired like that. And then I'd have to pretend to be a woman when I'm advertising to women. I'd have to pretend to be a kid if I'm doing, so you spend your whole time not being yourself, and to suddenly find yourself able to be yourself. And if you want to be generous, then if you are generous as a person, then just allows you to be generous. But
It's actually one of the first things I said to you when we spoke. I was like, you came back to me within seconds of me messaging you.
But why wouldn't I?
Because you're busy, or you're more important.
I'm busy, but also if somebody emails me, I respond to every message I get. I try and respond to every message I get on Instagram or whatever. If somebody says something like, respond, connect. It's not that difficult. But, the best thing that's ever happened to me was... and I've just been there, actually. There's a gallery called Jealous in Shoreditch, and Dario is a bloke that he runs the gallery. He's Italian. He's born over here, like me, born over here, but from Italian parents. And I remember when I was working in advertising, I didn't know him, never met him before. I asked somebody was talking about Jealous Gallery, and I did a piece there was a big actual size model of Charles Saatchi when he strangled his wife. Do you remember when he strangled Nigella Lawson in a restaurant? I thought he needs to have a punch thrown at him. So I built a full size model, got a shop dummy, and built this face of him and put it in a suit. And it had an interactive arm. So you could take a selfie being throttled by Charles Saatchi. And I wanted to leave it outside his gallery as a sort of statement, like, you're a wanker for doing. And he had a book out at the time called Be the Worst You Can Be, and he painted these little horns on his head. So I did his head red with these horns. And I didn't really know what to do with it. And everyone in the agency was shitting themselves, like, oh my God, you can't put it outside. And so I sent an email to 3 people. Dario was one of them, and another couple. And I didn't know any of them. I just said, and all I said was, do you want to do something naughty? That was it. It wasn't like, hi, I'm Dave. I'm a 53-year-old creative in advertising. I just said, do you want to do something naughty? He responded literally 2 seconds after I sent it. He said, yeah, go on then. What is it? And I sent him a picture of this statue, and he went, what the fuck's that? And I said, it's a full-size model of Charles Saatchi, interactive arm. I don't know what to do with it. And he just went, how quickly can you get it over to Crouch End? I said, I'll stick it in a van this afternoon. So I put it in a van, drove around to his gallery. He put it in I said, mate, whatever you do, don't put my name on it. He just went, all right, we'll just call you a young unknown British artist. And I went, young, great. And I was on holiday like 3 days later in Italy. I had a copy of The Sun, and it was on page 5.
And you're like, damn, I should have put my name on it.
No, but I was more just like, hold on a minute. Fuck, I spend billions of pounds for clients' money over the years trying to get them into the paper but nobody talks about advertising. And then all of a sudden, I did a poster for the anti-war march in 2003, Make Tea Not War, that got on the front pages of all the paper, and then we did this Charles Saatchi thing. And I just thought, hold on, I've done two things in the art world that have both become, maybe there's something in it.
Yeah.
But it was that response from him. Do you want to do something naughty? Yeah, go on then. What is it?
And then just went with it.
And it changed my life because I was still working in advertising, but it's just being just output the whole time. And so when you got in touch, I was like, yeah, come on, why not? Why would I say no? That's what I find it's much more interesting to say yes to everything.
Sometimes.
It's much more interesting to say yes to everything because interesting doesn't always have to be good.
Yeah.
But something interesting will always come of it. Because if it's a horrific nightmare, you learn to avoid that person's call. And if it's amazing, other amazing shit will happen. So that's what I mean about that generosity. It's like, it's just a mindset, I think.
What's the thing that you don't want anyone to know about you?
Wow. I think when you're younger, and I see it interestingly, with the way that personal things used to be things that people would never talk about. I remember when I was at school, being foreign meant you were different. If you were different, you were wrong. You're foreign. You've got a foreign sounding name. You go and hang around with all the other foreign kids. Personally, I liked it, preferred it. There's a sort of straightforwardness and an honesty that you get with immigrants, which is just like, mate, I look different, I sound different, I am different, so I'm not going to bullshit you with a whole load of politics and all that kind of crap. On top of that, people have issues, ADHD, OCD, all of the fucking stuff that is now completely recognised and completely talked about and understood much more than it was in those days. I think, we struggle through stuff a lot. I think looking at the way the world is now, I think that it's really refreshing that people are allowed to be who they want to be. I don't really have anything. There are lots of things, I remember being really shy when I was younger and sort of having to learn the hard way about how to adapt and how to make the most of try and understand what you're good at. And more importantly, understand what you're not good at and stop fucking doing things that you're not good at. And I find it very hard to trust people, very, very hard to trust people now. I don't trust anybody. In my opinion, I would say all people are fuckers until proven otherwise. And maybe it's just, the world I was in, the dark place that I was in when I worked on the ad game, where I was surrounded by people who were brilliant at the Machiavellian world of, chess.
Yeah.
I'll play football. It's really simple. Give me the ball, kick it. When it's all the chess and all the manipulation, I just don't get it. And I felt very exposed. And the thing that I feel most ashamed about in my life is that because I'm a pleaser, I allowed that sort of shit to go on for way too long. And by the time I did pull the plug, when I left my marriage and my job and lost everything twice. My job was my pension, and that got taken care of. Somebody else took that and then sold the business to Accenture for a huge amount of money, and I didn't really get anything out of it. It's really shameful, and I feel a lot of shame, and I feel a lot of sort of guilt, and a lot of that I'm just a bit stupid, And I think when I went to school, like I said to you very early on, I'm not bright. I'm probably a lot smarter than my qualifications will give me credit for.
Absolutely.
Getting art and woodwork. I remember my dad said, "Great, you can paint a picture of the table you just made." And I was like, "Yeah, that's not bad." But I think it's more that thing that when you go with the flow. So, in your 20s, you're about socializing and having fun and working in interesting environments. It's a gradual decline of your ambition or your whatever the fuck it is you want to become. And it's like aging, it happens minute by second, but on such a tiny scale, you don't notice it. And then suddenly when you look at a picture of yourself when you're 19 and a picture of what you look like now, you go, what the fuck? And,
oh, yes.
And I think I just felt horribly ashamed that I'd allowed my life to get like that. Like I said, being in London in the 21st century, owner of an ad agency, he's got a house in Dalston, he's got a car, he's got 2 kids, he's got a great job, you know.
You've
pretty
ticked
pretty fucking good.
You've ticked every social,
and I just felt
norm.
I was still unhappy, and the fact that I was feeling unhappy felt so personal, and I felt ashamed that I'd hired all these people, I'd made a decision about that marriage, they were all choices that I made, and I just felt ashamed. And it was what I've very, very rarely. I mean, I've done a couple of things in my life where I felt ashamed. I really, not even that bad, but there is something about when you feel shame. It kills you. It
deep.
Kills you. And it really made me think, now you've just got to you be nice to everybody. You just hug everybody. You kiss every fucking dog. You eat every meal. You do everything that you think you want to do. And you just fucking do it. Because we're running out of time.
Yeah.
And, again, if it happened in my 30s, I probably would have been different. But the fact that it happened in my 50s and I'm now 60 this year, I kind of look at it like, man, you get 80 summers if you're lucky. And the last 10 are always a bit suspect. That's when you're stumbling around in your pants, shouting at cars and forgetting everything. So I've got like 10.
So what do the next 10 have? What do you want to do in those next 10?
I don't know what. I don't know. I mean, I think that the thing that happened with COVID, and I remember when I worked in advertising, you'd set up an ad agency. If you got through the first 2 years where you survived, you were like, okay, now we might have something to build on. If you get through the first 6 months, a year, 2 years, you're robust enough to sort of think, okay, what's happening in the next 5 years? So you'd always have stretch goals. You'd go, right, next 10 years, this is what I want to be, and this is what we should be. These are the kind of clients we got to win. So you kind of know moment by moment what you need to do, but then you've got that thing, that manifestation. I had the same as an artist, when in 2020. I mean, it was just like I had no relation. Didn't have any. I had a couple of galleries that were selling my stuff, but I wanted to build on that, and I wanted to express myself, and 2020 happened, and suddenly every 5-year plan went out the window, and it was like,
what's happening today?
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Get to the end of the week, got Spam in the fridge, brilliant. I've got toilet paper, fantastic. And so now I actually find that kind of world of I don't know what's happening next.
How do you want to feel? So not what do you want to do? How do you want to feel over the next 10 years?
When I worked in advertising, I would get up every day feeling horrifically stressed because I know I've got 10 hours of meetings, doing things I don't want to do, not doing any work. The only time I can do any work was when everyone else is fucked off out at 7 o'clock. And then I had a wife that didn't like me very much because I was always at work 9 days a week doing advertising. And then I'd come home and I had no relationship. I didn't have anybody to talk to. I didn't have anybody that I loved, that loved me. And it was just, and so not getting up, when I get up in the morning now, I feel fantastic. I get on my motorbike, I ride to the studio, I go in and do stuff. I don't feel any stress. When I go home at night, I don't get any stress because I live alone. I come in on the weekends, I don't feel tired, I don't feel phased. It's like everything I'm doing just feels like it's constantly on charge. And also, I'm in the brilliant world of, again, when I worked on the ad side, you'd have to come up with 100 ideas that you'd present to 100 people over a process of about 6 weeks. Everybody would have an opinion. The only idea that would survive 100 people all hitting it with a stick would be the most robust, most boring, most unoriginal idea that you can imagine. And that I felt was a real waste of talent because you were just creating stuff and throwing it all away.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's the opposite. So you go from an introvert world where you're just boiling down, compacting, condensing, chopping away, to now when I come up with an idea, it's a bit like when you hear, we were talking about it the other day, when you hear ABBA and you hear all of those tracks, they all sort of sound like they're the same. There's a sort of thing that holds them, a red thread that goes through them. Now, I bet when they wrote Waterloo, there would have been something that one of them tried. What about this? And he goes, no, we'll do that for Waterloo, but I think we'll use that thing that you just tried on another track. And so there's something very generative, which is really nice where, and this is back to that thing of being generous and saying yes to everything, is it leads to opportunities. So you start off with one thing, you do it, and it spreads, it grows. And that's what I want to be doing. I feel very, very happy and very, very privileged to be doing what I'm doing now. I get to make stuff, and then people come along and they like it more than I like it, and they give me money to have it. And I go, that's fucking good. It's about as good as it gets. I can say safely it's the best life I've ever had. And so long may it continue. I mean, I was having a chat with Dario, and he was saying, I think a big part of it is what do you want to do? Do you want to be the artist that has a one-man show at the, a solo show at the Tate Modern? And I'm like, fuck no. I mean, it's like, I'm too late for that. If I was in my 20s and I went to the right art school and I had benefactors and I was connected and I did all that schmoozing, and it's just not me. I don't want to do that. I don't like.
You want to be you.
I just want to be able to be me. I've got my audience, people who like me on Instagram. That's the only audience I have. I can overshare and share and just have fun and be stupid, and I don't mind coming across as stupid because I am fucking stupid. No, but I don't mean daft. I mean daft, not ignorant.
Yeah.
And so I can just be myself.
Maybe a better word is playful.
Playful is probably a much kinder word. But it's that I like being able to be myself. It's very liberating to suddenly free yourself of all the shackles of what you think you have to be in order to get by. And so I just, my only ambition as an artist is to have one of my prints in everybody's house in the world. I'm very, it's a stretch goal.
Okay.
It's a stretch goal, but I don't mind it. I do lots of stuff for free. I do lots of stuff for 10 quid, 50 quid, 40 quid, whatever. And I do lots of stuff at the other end of the spectrum. My problem is I like to make stuff. And it's a bit of an issue because a lot of galleries, if you only make a few things, then we can sell it for more money, or we can make it a bit.
The limited edition versions.
I'm not going to fucking sit there and go, just for you, hold it all back. I'm going to make a shitload of stuff. And I watched other artists doing stuff, and I'd go, God, you do 2 editions a year. I'm not doing 2 a week.
Yeah. Because
I've got this insatiable hunger, and this, when you come out of prison, not that I've ever been to prison, but when you come out of prison, you want to eat everything. You want to drink everything. You want to experience, listen to every bit of music you miss. It's like
world.
You just want to experience. It's like literally a flip side of. It's like the Matrix. I've been in the pit. Now I'm living in the slow motion bit where everything's beautiful. It's like fuck. I just want to enjoy every moment of it, and it's
how liberating. The word I find is liberating. How liberating.
Yeah, it is. So I'd highly recommend it. I mean, I wouldn't recommend going through. I mean, I don't think my life is any harder than, or has been any harder than anybody else's life. I think we all go through shit, and we all go through ups and downs, good and bad. But it tastes really sweet now because I just did it for a long time, and like I said, now I'm 60, and I'm like a pig in shit. I mean, I love it. I love it.
We started this conversation with who is Dave, and I said we'd come right round.
Yeah, but I think I feel like I'm still being analysed.
No, you're not being analysed at all.
Okay.
So who is Dave? Is there anything that you would add, adapt and change to how you started?
What, my answer?
Yeah.
Which was very functional. There's a 59-year-old bloke who lives in Hackney and does art. I think I try to be honest, decent. As a Catholic immigrant spawn, you have a fear of doing the wrong thing. I tried to be decent to everybody I meet. I try and be a friend to everybody I hang around with. I still have issues. There's still a lot of people I would happily run over. But I try and be, give everybody the benefit of the doubt to a degree. Like I said, I've become much more suspicious because when you lose everything and you're in the game of snakes and ladders and you think you're quite high up the ladder or high up the board, and then you find yourself right back down again at the age of 50 or 55, it can be quite an awakening. But fortunately, I've got something I love doing, and fortunately, I've got something I love doing that other people seem to like, and it's hugely, it feeds you, because feeling, and maybe it goes back to when I was at school, where you're different, you're thick, you've got your OCD or ADHD, massively ADHD when I was at school. You know, you're different and you're wrong and you get pushed away. Whereas now I think that we're in an era where if you're different and you're wrong, no one gives a fuck anymore, really. And sometimes it can actually be, for a lot of people, it can be a bit of a badge of honor that, you know, I'm different. And that's interesting. Different is better than boring or vanilla. And so, I don't know. I mean, I guess, you know, one of the things I'm most proud about when I worked in advertising is I never slept with any of my employees, never did coke. I've never done coke in advertising. Can you believe it? I mean,
How many years were you in advertising?
35 years. Never did it.
Wowzers.
I don't drink. I don't do anything that, you know, and I mean, that business is like Sodom and Gomorrah on a fucking Saturday night. And so it was just, I was glad that I sort of I had those, and maybe it's because the agencies I set up were always very, very heavily value driven. You know, they had integrity and value. Values was the most important thing. It's back to that thing of why you connect with a certain phone brand. It's because you feel like that's me. And so you reflect that. And so I just stayed away from all of that. And I didn't want all the superficial bullshit. I wanted, my clients paid me to improve their business. And really, I'm really fucking linear. You pay me to do that and then I'll do it. And if I don't do it, kick my ass and I'll try harder next time. And so it was just all of the flannel that went around it, like and we're going to go here and we're going to do coke with strangers and then get off with people. It was just like, it's just nothing I want to do. Also, I just didn't like the people very much. So anything I could do to avoid being in that world was really good. But, you know, I thought we had an agency. I had several agencies that were really nice places to work for a period of time for a lot of people. And that fills me with a lot of joy that we did something that was good, that, you know, made people feel good and they had an opportunity to prove how good they were. So I guess, you know, I'm just quite a normal guy, but I'm very passionate about lots of things and I'm very honest about everything because I can't really work out how to, can't do lies, don't work for me. And you just try and be generous and nice to people.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure. Thank you.
If you enjoyed that conversation, please share A Class of Their Own podcast with your friends and family. Subscribe, follow and like. It really helps us continue to grow. Keep being you through connection, learning and play. You are a class of your own.